another edition of Ask the Betrayed. I'm Sharon,
I'm Rae.
and we are here to do some myth busting.
Yes, it's one of
This
my
is,
favorite parts of our job.
I think that we have a really interesting list of things. And I think that one of the first ones that we need to bust is the kids don't know.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So take that one away, Mama.
So, if it is happening in your home, your children know. There's a saying, little pitchers have ears. They might not know the complexities of it. They might not know all of the ins and outs of it. They might not know exactly what's happened, but they do know something is up. And just like we don't like to be gaslit, let's not gaslight our children.
Yeah.
Let's not say to them this internal feeling of uncomfortability or even fear about what's happening with mama and daddy isn't real.
Hmm.
I'm not saying tell them everything. There is a rule of thumb that you talk about things in an age appropriate manner. A statement such as, Mom and dad are working on a problem together is a great one. There are some things that dad and I or mom and I are learning about ourselves and each other, and we are getting some help with that. The caveat is to always reassure your children that no matter what is happening, you can handle it. We've got this. You might see mom or dad sad. You might see mom or dad angry. And it's okay because we've got this. And we love you.
Yeah.
You didn't cause this. This isn't about you. Mom and dad are handling it.
Mm-hmm. And I always think it's a special opportunity to be able to either explicitly teach your kiddos or at minimum model for them how you are learning to handle big, hard emotions. So I know it's been kind of sad and angry around here lately. When I feel sad and angry, I need to do things to make me feel better, to help me feel better. Can we talk about what that looks like or how you might do that?
Mhm. I know that for me, I had small children and preoccupation was an issue.
Yeah.
I was not as available to my children as I usually was. I wasn't as on top of things. I wasn't planning the way. I wasn't as active. I wasn't as social, and that impacted my children.
Mm.
And so, really being aware of the places where your children need you to show up. If you did this before, if this was an activity that you did before, keep it up.
Or even find a way to meet the same need in a way that is accessible.
Yes. My Mama Smith always said that hiring help is the cheapest thing that you can do for your well being as a mother or a father who may be taking care of young children. And it doesn't have to be like a nanny. People think, oh, well, we can't afford a nanny or whatever. But what about the little girl down the street who can be a helper, who can play with the kids in a way that you just might not be able to right now?
Mhm.
When I worked with children and families, something that I always said is if you can put your phone down
Mm.
and you can spend some one on one time with each one of your children every day, it doesn't have to be a ton of time, but that uninterrupted, completely focused time with your kids goes a long, long way.
I can see it having multi-directional benefits. Good for you and good for your kids.
Yes. I think that leads us to another myth that we see not only in the unfaithful and betrayal arena, but in marriage in general. If the marriage isn't working, sometimes folks think that a baby might be the solution.
Right. Something that will bond us, will get us on the same page, will make us feel like more of a family or a particular type of family.
Mhm. Betrayal is particularly hard on pregnant women, on young mothers.
Postnatal too. It's interesting because I work really hard because I needed it so much to remind betrayed partners that you can always make course corrections. You can make a decision, you can decide it's not working, and then you can do something to change the course of that decision. And I always throw in there are a few life decisions that are not easy to undo, and having a child is one of those.
I believe that children are always blessings, and there's a time and a place where you can put all of your time and energy and love and excitement into that blessing.
Mm.
Children are little sponges and they feel our emotions. Just like we often talk about with the couples that we see, how we can pick up on other people's energy. Have you ever walked into the house and you know that your partner is not having a good day because you can feel that heaviness, you can feel that energy? Children are absorbing all of that as well. I would like to take this opportunity to also say that if you have children under 12 and your home is having a hard time, play therapy is very, very appropriate for them. It's just really helpful. Children learn through play, and play therapists are very skilled at helping children balance themselves. Children are so amazingly resilient. Their brains are so elastic that a little bit of help goes a long way with children.
Let's do a whole episode sometime on play therapy and art therapy, other kinds of creative and expressive interventions for partners and betrayal.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do that.
One thing I'll toss in there too is believing that as parents, you have to do everything right all the time.
Mm.
I was one of these human beings who grew up believing that my childhood was pretty close to perfect. And then over the course of my own therapy and processing and deconstructing, realized that it wasn't exactly everything that I thought that it was. One pain that I have carried for most of my adult life was that I'm sorry wasn't something we said much in my family. I remember realizing what it would have meant at certain junctures to hear one of my family members, including one of my parents, say, I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry I did that way, or I'm so sorry that happened that way. I think that would have carried a lot of weight and
Mhm.
balanced out some of the unspoken hurts that I carried for quite a long time.
Yes. Let's sprinkle a little education here about an amends process.
Ooh, love it.
I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to talk about how we feel an amends really can make a difference. Saying I'm sorry is something that we often say, I wish I heard more of. We like to go a little deeper. We like to make it a little more meaningful. So the way that it goes is I apologize for, so I'm going to pretend that I yelled at my children. I apologize for raising my voice.
Mhm.
I think that maybe it hurt your feelings. It made you feel sad or afraid. Am I right? It made me really mad, Mommy. I'm so mad at you for yelling at me. I shouldn't raise my voice. I am upset about something that has nothing to do with you. So next time I feel like I want to yell at you, I'm going to take a big deep breath. I'm going to count to 10. Do you think that you could do that with me? Let's practice right now. Giving your children the opportunity to see you make mistakes, see you own the mistake, and allowing them to see a bit of your process about how to fix it is so important.
Mhm.
As humans, we have this whole lifetime of learning things about who we are and how we are in the world. And you never know when you might get those apologies for things that happened when you're young.
Yeah.
It's never too late. So if you have adult children, it's
Mm.
never too late.
Really, really true. Really
Mhm.
true. I was watching a TV show last night and it had an incredibly intense, like almost too much intense emotional scene of a mother apologizing to her adult son. And it had my partner and I both in tears because it was just so raw and so realized that if they don't both earn awards for that performance, I don't know what I'm going to do because it was so, so, so powerful.
I think the next two that we have to talk about are if the acting out stops, I will feel better.
Hmm.
I think we've probably said on here it's not just the acting out. Yes, that needs to stop. Absolutely. And how are you being treated?
Right, right. And what does that repair look like? So you've got the primary violations of the sexual or relational infidelity, you've got all of the surrounding behaviors that accompany it. But then, even if all of those things stopped cold turkey, which doesn't always happen, you've still got a wound, an untended, unrepaired, infected wound that's not going to heal or feel better all by itself.
That's right. My mama fell last week and she has a pretty good cut and scrape on her knee. And she said to me yesterday, I don't think it's getting any better. And I said, it is in a place where you are going to keep opening up that wound every time you move. It's
Mhm.
just going to take time and some consistent care in order for it to get better. So this morning I talked to her and she said, I'm getting ready to go for a walk. And I said, do you think that is wise? I saw that your knee's really trying to scab over. What if you gave it a chance to do that today?
Well, isn't that a metaphor?
Isn't it a great metaphor? She's probably up for walking. So, knowing that it isn't just the repair that needs to happen with the unfaithful, we have to pour into our own dedicated work to heal the wounds that have happened because of it.
Right. And I would say that time is an important, irreplaceable factor, but it is not the all magical
Mm-mm.
independent solution. It's the thing that must be present
Mm-mm.
for all of the hard work that we do to become possible and sustainable, but it doesn't happen all by itself. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. I think the flip side of that that's important to remember is that the pain that we feel today also won't last forever. That's kind of another related myth that I find we fall into very often, especially at the beginning of all of this, is the idea that this pain is going to be the end of my life. This is what I am going to be carrying until the day I die. This wound cannot heal. This hurt won't ever go away.
And the level of thinking and functioning that I have now will remain.
Yes.
A great analogy of that is for those of you who have had children and you have that tiny baby and it's not sleeping at night. I remember thinking, I will never be able to think clearly again. When will I ever get sleep again? And it's temporary. The phases that our children go through, and we think, I can't possibly do this one more minute, and then we get it figured out, and they're off to another phase. So knowing that if there is anything that is a truth, it's that life changes and our circumstances change, the way we feel change, our energy level changes, our ability to have space for ourselves changes. I just got off a call with one of our clients and I said, you have spent your whole adult life taking care of your family. And you took care of your family when you were a little girl as well. And part of what is so uncomfortable for you is having this opportunity to figure out how you want your life to be, what you want yourself to be in that life. It's great stuff. Like from us, you and I looking in on it, we're like, yes, that's so great, right? For the betrayed, when you are there, it is tough stuff to know that you are changing and that this is a process and it will get better. Sometimes it might get a little worse before it gets better, right? But it is a process.
You've heard that statement that the letters hope mean hold on, pain ends. And I had to adapt that years ago and say, hold on, pain evolves.
Yes, I love that. I love that. One of the lies that we see betrayeds holding on to as if it were a raft in the sea is if I can just keep them from acting out, everything will be okay. We absolutely, as betrayed, get to say, these behaviors are unacceptable to me. If you would like me to hold a safe space for our marriage, these behaviors are unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot keep someone else from acting out if they are going to do it.
Right.
We couldn't before, and we can't now.
Because as we talked about last night, it was never about us or the
Mm-hmm.
choices we were making in the first place.
That's right. That's right. I reacted a little differently than a lot of our clients do when I found out about betrayal with James. I had a very strong reaction to the idea that I was going to monitor him, what he was doing, and where he was. That didn't mean that my mind didn't go there, but I remember when he came back from a meeting with his sponsor and he said, I'm going to put a tracker on my car. I'm going to put the GPS on my phone. Those things for some people are really important. They create a sense of safety that is necessary. But if you are one of those oddballs like me and have a really strong reaction to that, yeah, that's okay too. I didn't want it. I didn't want that responsibility. I didn't want to constantly be flooded, wondering where he was heading as he went down A1A. Just know that it is not your job to stop the unfaithful from being unfaithful.
And I will say there's some ambiguity to the idea of what is my responsibility in terms of advocating for myself, in terms of doing what is within my power to assemble or accumulate or acquire the facts and information I need to make my own decisions or to feel like I am verifying the truth that my partner is giving me. So I think there's a sense in which we kind of have to work all of that out. It's not a one size fits all, here, do this, and it will all work out kind of a scenario, helping professionals and peers can be very useful when it comes to navigating through all of that. And I think there's a collateral myth to this one. It comes into play, which is if I know all of the things and I have all of the documentation and I have all of the reassurance and I have all of the information, then I will feel safe and I will be safe. I think two things come into play there. One is I think it's impossible to always know all the things. I also think that sometimes we have enough information that more information diminishes its return. It doesn't add anything beneficial and it does add things that are harmful. So those again are all really personal, custom kind of questions that we have to ask ourselves. But I think maybe if there's a message in what we're saying today, it's challenge the presumption or the assumption, the assertion that says, I have to know all the things, I have to lock everything down, I have to make all of those acting out avenues utterly inaccessible to my partner or within our home in order for me to feel safe or to know what to do.
And to know that it will change.
Mm.
Also, the needs in the first 3 days are different than the needs in the first 3 months, that are different in the needs of the first 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's one of the things that betrayeds can have a hard time on, is being able to be present enough within their bodies to know when a safety measure is perhaps harming them over helping them at a certain point.
Right, right. I remember the first time someone suggested to me that maybe I shouldn't have all of the passwords to all of the internet filters and all of those things because I think that person saw what the toll it was taking on me. And I felt very violated even by the question. I
Mhm.
felt like that person was trying to take away something that belonged to me, that I
Mhm.
had rights to, and that was an important part of how I was finding safety within my relationship.
Mhm.
Fast forward a few years, I can't begin to describe what it felt like to take all of those passwords, send them right back to him, and say, I don't want them anymore. So, really, an example of what you're saying, where the one thing that kept us feeling safe in one scenario in a different situation, time, and place can be exactly the thing that's keeping us trapped now.
We're really not trying to confuse you all. What we're saying is that recovery from betrayal trauma is fluid.
Yeah, yeah, well said.
And the thing that we don't want to hear as betrayed is, I have to change what I'm doing, right? This is working. Why are you saying that at some point I might change that?
Mhm.
Right? And so just know that your helping professional is keeping an eye on what's benefiting you or what's holding you back.
Yes.
And if they're not, ask questions. Do you think that this is appropriate? What do you think about if I do XYZ?
And I will go back to something that we have said so many times and will continue to say, having choices is part of how we heal. So if I think of this as us opening doors and offering permission to partners to make choices and decisions or to consider choices and decisions that are in their best interests, that feels to me like we're hitting the right note.
Yes, yes. Since we've talked about allowing your helping professional to help you gauge whether you're choosing health, I think that I would like to say that we end up as helping professionals having to clean up some inadvertent trauma that can happen when partners are on the internet and searching for help and are choosing something that sounds good to them that might not be good for them.
Mm.
I don't know how often this has happened with you, but within, let's say, that first year, we sometimes have to walk couples back from choices that they are making to try to accelerate their healing or add in to their healing, because it can be harmful if it's too soon. For example, choosing to do a weekend online couples workshop with someone else besides your primary people. I have seen that blow up too many times to count.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that need to continue to push forward. Also, that irritation or that frustration that things aren't happening as quickly as you want them to. And I want to say that just like on Ask the Unfaithful, you hear James talk about how he ran everything by his therapist and his sponsor in the early time of his recovery. If you could run things by your helping professional before you sign up for them, before you buy them, before you choose them, it would be a good idea, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay. It's just that there are things that are out there that are not meant for unfaithful and betrayal trauma work. Really good things out there for couples that do not address the specifics of what you are living through.
Right, right. And kind of normalize for a second this idea of wanting to feel like a normal couple.
Hmm.
Or the marriage enrichment seminars or the spice up your life workshops or whatever it may be, and that desire to feel like maybe everything in our relationship doesn't have to be all about betrayal and all about trauma. And like you said, there are times and places and considerations
Mhm.
that really indicate whether or not that is helpful. And what we really want to do is avoid harmful.
Yes,
Yeah.
we really want to avoid harmful. I'm going to take the opportunity to say, if you're working with someone who is trained as a helping professional in this arena, we all know each other. We know what other people are good at. And we have this network where we can tap into and say, hey, I'm working with a couple right now and they're wanting so and so. What are you offering right now that can do it, so that we can make sure that they are getting appropriate, timely additions to whatever else we're doing with them?
Right. I think another piece of this tends to be the myth that says the next book I read, the next retreat we go to, the next therapist we find will be the answer. And there's a caveat to that. Obviously, we're saying the right kind of help can make all the difference in the world, and it will not rescue you from yourself,
Right?
meaning you get to and need to be the driving motivation, the heart and soul and open opportunity for any of that to take root and make a big difference. One thing that my own therapist taught me years ago that I still reference back regularly is, if you won't do the free thing, what makes you think you'll do the expensive thing? Or if you won't do the thing that you've already bought and is sitting on your bookshelf, what makes you think that the next one is the thing that will unlock everything? So that's kind of a pitfall that I sometimes think we see ourselves and our couples falling into.
Yes. And another thing is the helper shopper piece. So I'm going to work with this particular helper, a coach, a therapist, and within 6 weeks, things start to get a little hard. So I'm going to switch. That search for the perfect therapist can be really detrimental. That doesn't mean that you are stuck with someone who is not helping you. Advocate for yourself, ask questions, see if you can't get what's happening with your helper to work better for you. I love it when a client works harder in an hour than I do, because they've come prepared to talk about whatever it is that they need to talk about. But by the time we see some people, there has been this start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. That really isn't necessarily a function of the professionals that they have seen before. It is a function of not understanding the process that you are in, not understanding that this takes time, that there are different stages, that there are different goals that we can set with you to help you better navigate your journey toward health.
And I think it's also important to remember this is different than saying you don't need a lot of people on your care team. We're not talking about something that's collaborative in
Mhm.
nature, more the serial solution seeking. We often see individuals who will reach out for help when there's a moment of crisis.
Mhm.
And when the moment of crisis passes, they disappear.
Yes.
And then the next time there's a moment of crisis, we hear from them again. And I'm not saying that there isn't value or advantage in those moments of crisis where that motivation to do something kicks in and has the capacity to gain some traction, but it's not what builds sustained and sustainable change.
Yes.
Okay, so can I tell a story?
Yes.
Okay. So while we're on the topic of couples therapy, something that occurred to me in terms of these lies that can keep us stuck is the idea that couples therapy or couples coaching is all we need to do, that we can do all of our work together as a couple. And I wanted to share a story about a case that I've worked with that was the exception to the rule because I think it highlights the way that it does and doesn't work. So I had this couple once. They were from a different part of the world than I was. So I got up at 6 a.m. to see them every week for a couple of months. And they did all of their individual work in our couples session. So, what I mean by that is we would almost tag team it, where we would spend part of our 2 hour sessions where it was more of a dialogue between he and I, part of our sessions where it was more of a dialogue between she and I, part of the sessions where I sat back and let the two of them kind of bounce things off of each other. But the bulk of their work was done in the container that we created for the three of us working together. That is not what usually happens. What we typically find is that in order for couples to show up well for one another and to more help than harm the state of their relational bond, there needs to be some kind of individual, separate component to even their relational work. So tell me where that lands with you and what your experience with that has been.
I'm thinking of that couple that you're talking about, and I didn't know them and I don't know your work with them, but I'm thinking that they had some internal safety and stabilization that they brought into those sessions with them. That's where the initial individual work happens. In order to be able to show up in the marriage arena or in the relationship arena in a couples session, you have to be able to know how to keep yourself safe. It's our job as the helping professional to keep the room safe. And you have to know a little bit about who you are, what makes you tick, what's important, what's not, what are your values. Those types of things all go into really successful couples therapy experiences. I've told this story a lot. And I'm just going to say in this podcast that my family, we're known for kind of telling the same thing over and over again. So if you hear me tell a story a second time, please forgive me. It is a genetic trait. So the first year of mine and James's recovery, I said no to couples therapy. And I was a little egotistical about it. I said, you are not ready. You don't have the ego strength to sit with me in a couples session. So there was some truth to that. But really, what that was that I had a clearer sense of who I was than he did.
Mhm.
And he had to find that. Otherwise, it would have just been me and the therapist doing therapy with him.
Mhm.
He had to find out who he was. a little bit enough to be able to come to that. The second year of our recovery was all about fantastic couples work.
Yeah. See, and I will say my experience was probably the exact opposite of yours because I was raised hearing a story about my parents' marriage. Now, it was a story. It was told to me second or third hand, and you know how accurate those tend to be. But the story I grew up hearing was that when my parents' marriage was in trouble, they both went to counselors who told them the best thing for your relationship is for you to get divorced. Now, as a kid, that was not a feel-good story. As a
No.
kid, that was scary. Like I can
Mhm.
still feel it in my belly. So when my relationship was in trouble, if you had told me that what I had to do was go talk to somebody separately from my partner, I don't think I would have gone.
Mhm.
Not to start with,
Mhm.
because that old story that I was
Mhm.
carrying had so deeply colored my misunderstanding. You and I both sitting here today know how horrific it would be for any practitioner in their ethical selves to handle a situation that way, to show up that way with our clients. But from that perspective, I needed the entry point to our work and to my work to be together. I think we lucked out in a sense that the therapist that we found was patient and understanding and caring enough to be both consistent with suggesting that we also needed individual work without shoving me out the door. So I'm
Yes.
forever grateful for that.
And I want to clarify that we're not saying that the old way of treating betrayal, trauma, and infidelity, of staying on your own side of the street, is the way to go. That is not what we're talking about at all.
Mhm.
In our practice at CORE, you come in as a couple. We have meeting points consistently and well timed. If we have a couple session, it might even be sort of an administrative session. These are the things that we have in store for you. These are the topics that we're looking at. Are there other topics that you want to add in? So there are things that are happening together that are so very important that we now know in treating any type of intimate betrayal are so important.
One of my favorite things working with you and the other partners and members on our team is that even when we've got couples that we're seeing separately as individuals or we're seeing them separately in groups, we are sharing pertinent, relevant, important details with each other as
Mhm.
collaborative care team providers in such a way as we are looking out for all parts of that system at any given time. And I'll say, I think we do that exceptionally well. And more practices are adopting or practicing similar standards for care, which is great.
Yes, it is. I hope that we've given you some things to think about that can help change your trajectory in your recovery. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Next week, make sure that you watch James and Sam on Ask the Unfaithful. If you like what we've done, please give us a thumbs up, share it with other people, subscribe to our page, and please, if you email us or comment, know that we're reading absolutely everything that comes across our table. We cannot do therapy via email or comments on YouTube. Thanks so much.
See you in 2 weeks.